Now, I first met Steve Snyder on April the 1st, went inside and was astonished at what I saw. To set the scene, for those of you who don't remember, the electricity had been off for almost 3 weeks. There was no electricity, there was no running water, there was no plumbing. They had been isolated and they were under siege. Some people say the Branch Davidians were keeping hostages. Just the opposite. The hostages were being kept by the government. And instead of seeing someone who was fretting and worried and emotionally unstable, instead I saw Steve Snyder, who was calm, he was confident, and what was most surprising to me, because of my Marine Corps background, was how well-groomed he was, how clean he was, and how he managed to do that under those circumstances. It just struck me as a first impression. He had on a clean long-sleeve shirt that looked like it had just come from the laundry. He had on a pair of blue jeans and tennis shoes, just like you and I would wear. He was well-groomed, he had a haircut, and he was articulate, persuasive, and calm. Judy was the same way. We spoke for some period of time. She had a wound to the hand. She had been shot in one of her fingers. It had become infected. You recall there was some talk about her being released to see a doctor or send a doctor in, and the government only would permit that if she agreed not to go back in. She chose to stay inside instead of taking that agreement. After we had been speaking for an hour and a half or so, I guess I made some kind of involuntary movement backwards, and it embarrassed her, and she realized that what was causing my reaction was the fact that she had, in order to combat the infection in her wound, had been eating raw garlic, and that there was a characteristic smell that she had become used to because, and the others, because she had done that for so long, but she realized that perhaps I didn't know where it was coming from. Judy was a mother. She loved her child, and one of the things that we talked about was when she came out, not if she came out, when she came out, who would take care of Mina until she was either released on bond or went to trial and was acquitted. And she told me that she wanted her mother to do that. These were the kind of things we talked about. Not some kind of wild-eyed, crazy thing that a lunatic would talk about, but the kind of things that a decent human being, a mother, would be concerned about. What is going to happen to my baby when I come out and go into custody, at least temporarily? When we talked to Steve about what should be done, obviously the correct legal advice was, let's get out of here, let's take this fight to the courthouse, and let's win in the courthouse. And he agreed. He agreed. His reaction from personal conversations to the loss of life was one of distress. He repeatedly stressed how the Branch Davidians were just as upset at the loss of life of the ATF agents as they were of their own, which convinced me that their religious beliefs were genuinely felt. This, although I personally did not subscribe to their religious beliefs, it convinced me, and it convinced Dick DeGuerin, that whatever their beliefs, they were genuinely held, and that they were religious people. They weren't vindictive people. They certainly were not a threat to Waco or anybody else. And that's the key. I think that that message has not been delivered to the American public, that the Branch Davidians were not a threat to anybody. They were out here, they were doing what they thought was called for by their religion, and they were not a threat to anybody. Certainly, they were not threats that deserved capital punishment. Steve reminded me when I asked him, those of you who did not visit inside and haven't had a chance to talk to those that lived inside need to be aware of how Spartan the conditions were, and that the home was in the process still of being built. And when asked about his religious beliefs and what caused him to do this, he reminded me that he left a very comfortable life in Hawaii to come be here and live at Mt Carmel Center. Not the compound, which was the spin put on it by the government. If you remember, Steve became the first lieutenant, and it became the compound and all these other military terms to justify the appearance of all these people in military uniforms out here. But that was Mt Carmel Center. That was their home. And he reminded me that although his beliefs were different than mine, he genuinely believed in that. And when I passed on the messages from his family, personally passed on the messages from his sisters and his parents and Judy's brother and her parents, the response was, tell them that we appreciate their love, we're loyal to them, but I am convinced that what I'm doing is right, and that's what God wants me to do, and if they want to support me, then they need to support what we're doing in pursuit of our religious belief. So to me, there was no question that whatever his belief, he genuinely held that. He wanted to come out. Judy wanted to come out. They were going to come out. And on April the 4th, when Dick and I went in for the second 8-hour period, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after we had explained all the legal options to them, and they had left the room and had a discussion with the people that they wanted to talk to, they came back and Steve said, we accept your advice as being correct. We understand that it would be in our best interest to come out right now and walk out with you. However, we make decisions on 2 levels in here. There's the secular law and the spiritual law. We agree with you that the secular law should say come out today. However, our spiritual law says we must wait for a sign. It was on the eve of Passover, and then you know the history from that. The next time that we talked to them was on it was on April the 14th, when Steve read me a letter that had been written by David Koresh. All over the telephone, he read the letter in which the Branch Davidians, through David Koresh, said that they were coming out and they were wanting to face man and answer the charges. But it couldn't happen until his religious project that he had been waiting to complete was over. They told us it would take about 12 more days. We went back, told the FBI after the attorney-client privilege was specifically waived so that we could do that. We gave the FBI a copy. We read to the press verbatim what that letter stated, and I told them that the excitement that I heard in Steve's voice with his Wisconsin accent, still I can hear it as if it were yesterday, that we believed that they were going to be coming out, and could the FBI wait another 12 days? The answer, of course, was we have all the time that's necessary to resolve this peacefully. And I've got to tell you that after several decades, both prosecuting, defending, and serving as a criminal trial judge, it was my opinion, shared by Dick DeGuerin, that those FBI agents on the ground who were in charge, who gave us that promise, were sincere. It's history and extraordinarily unfortunate that their opinions were overridden by the bureaucrats in Washington. And we know that at 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 years ago to the day, everybody in the Mt Carmel Center was healthy, given the circumstances. They were alive, and a few short hours later, at 1 p.m., those who had not been fortunate enough to escape the fire had all perished. What's the lesson to be learned?